US President Donald Trump is seen walking across the tarmac in Sepang, Malaysia, under a bright and cloudless midday sky. The scene is orderly, controlled and formal as staff and security personnel maintain a perimeter around the airfield. The presidential aircraft waits at the centre of the frame, engines ready, steps lowered. The president moves at a steady pace, acknowledging a few aides as he makes his way toward the plane. There is no public crowd here, no cheering supporters or waving banners. This is a working departure, marking the end of the Malaysia stop on his Asia tour. The plane stands as a symbol of American statecraft overseas, gleaming white and blue, its presence emphasizing the scale and importance of this diplomatic journey. As the president ascends the steps, the sense of transition becomes clear. Malaysia has served as an important stop, one focused on regional cooperation and dialogue, but ahead now is Japan, where deeper strategic discussions are expected to take place before the tour's most closely watched moment, the anticipated meeting with China's President Xi Jinping. Over the past several days, Kuala Lumpur hosted delegates and leaders from across Southeast Asia for the 47th ASEAN Summit. The summit brought together not only regional states, but also global partners, reflecting the strategic weight of Southeast Asia in global diplomacy. In halls lined with national flags and in meeting rooms designed for quiet negotiation, discussions range from trade corridors and energy routes to maritime coordination and emerging security alignments. The region remains shaped by competing influences as local governments balance economic growth ambitions with the realities of geopolitical competition. On the sidelines of the summit, a particularly notable bilateral meeting took place between the United States and Brazil. President Trump and Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva held a face-to-face discussion, emphasizing the growing relevance of South-South and trans-regional economic engagement. The photograph of the two leaders seated across from each other, with aides arranged to the side, reflects a moment of focused diplomatic exchange. The tone was professional, measured, and anchored in shared interest. The United States has signaled that Brazil remains a key partner on hemispheric cooperation, agricultural trade, energy development, and climate-related concerns. Brazil, for its part, has sought to maintain independent diplomatic ground, balancing relations with the US, China, and emerging global forums. The meeting in Kuala Lumpur offered both leaders a chance to reaffirm intentions without the more public formality of national visits or press conferences. During the same bilateral interaction, the US president was also photographed gesturing while speaking, a moment that conveys the direct and assertive communication style that has become familiar in international diplomatic settings. There was no elaboration released publicly about the specifics of the discussion, but officials familiar with the engagement indicated that trade balances, market access, and investment channels were central themes. For both Washington and Brasilia, economic policy remains closely tied to broader global positioning. The Asia tour, however, is shaped most significantly by the upcoming meeting with China's leadership. The strategic relationship between the United States and China continues to define the global political and economic environment. Competition over supply chains, technological standards, currency markets, regional military posture, and international influence forms the core of this relationship. While both countries publicly affirm the importance of stability, their respective strategies reflect deep and ongoing disagreements. The movement of the US president from Malaysia to Japan serves both logistical and symbolic roles. Japan remains one of the United States' strongest and most consistent allies in the Asia-Pacific region. Strategic discussions in Tokyo are expected to focus on defense coordination, semiconductor and energy supply security, and approaches to regional maritime activity. Recent years have seen increased cooperation between the two countries on air, naval, and cyber defense. Japan has also been recalibrating its own defense strategy, signaling a more active role in securing trade routes and regional stability. The timing of the Japan stop carries added relevance. Many governments in the region are closely monitoring how US policy will respond to evolving Chinese influence. Southeast Asian states, including Malaysia, continue to emphasize the need for balance and multilateralism. While the United States remains a key security partner to many, China is a primary economic partner for nearly all. This dual reality shapes regional diplomacy as governments pursue development and investment opportunities while managing the constraints and risks associated with strategic competition. In Malaysia, meetings during the stop included discussions regarding trade facilitation, digital economy cooperation, and infrastructure investment. Malaysia, positioned at a geographic crossroads, views regional interconnectedness as central to its long-term economic aspirations. The ASEAN bloc itself serves as a platform to negotiate collectively in relations with global powers, but member states maintain varied approaches based on domestic needs and priorities. For Malaysia, economic diversification and regional stability are essential. The images of the president boarding the plane, calm and procedural, underscore the logistical rhythm of diplomatic travel. These high-level sequences often unfold without public fanfare, yet each movement marks the continuation of negotiations that span continents and intersect with global markets. Airspace corridors, itineraries, and schedule precision all contribute to the momentum of statecraft. The plane's departure from Malaysia signals the official conclusion of this regional stop. From Kuala Lumpur to Sepang to the runway, security coordination and communications teams maintain steady operations. The takeoff, though routine, carries strategic significance. It transitions the tour toward Japan, where discussions will directly influence subsequent dialogue with China. The global diplomatic environment remains dynamic, shaped by economic shifts and cross-regional cooperation frameworks. In Tokyo, the schedule is expected to include high-level government meetings, business council engagements, and discussions with defense officials. The shared priorities are clear: technological innovation, secure supply chains, coordinated deterrence, and regional economic alignment. As global competition intensifies over semiconductor manufacturing, rare earth processing, and renewable technologies, both countries are working to fortify resilience in their production systems. The forthcoming meeting with China sits at the center of global diplomatic attention. The United States and China remain the two largest economies in the world, and their interactions affect global inflation trends, commodity markets, currency valuations, and the pace of technological development. The outcome of any discussions between the two heads of state carries implications felt far beyond Asia. Relations between Washington and Beijing in recent years have involved periods of both dialogue and tension. Trade disputes, intellectual property concerns, military presence in contested waters, and differing approaches to global governance continue to influence the tone of the relationship. Diplomats on both sides describe the relationship as competitive, but also structurally necessary. Each side remains aware that neither disengagement nor escalation serves long-term stability. The Asia tour, therefore, is more than a sequence of bilateral visits. It is part of a broader diplomatic recalibration occurring at a global level. Nations across Asia, Latin America, Europe, and Africa are navigating how to position themselves within shifting global economic frameworks. The movement of leaders, the language of joint statements, and the structure of trade agreements all reflect evolving patterns of influence. In this broader context, the bilateral image from Kuala Lumpur, President Trump seated with President Lula da Silva, stands as a reminder of a parallel dynamic. Countries outside the core US-China axis are becoming increasingly important players in global negotiations. Brazil, as one of the world's largest food exporters and a leading voice in multilateral forums, holds strategic value. Its presence at the ASEAN Summit marks the growing recognition of interregional diplomacy. As the US president travels onward to Japan, these layered considerations remain active. Diplomacy unfolds through visible gestures and unseen discussions alike. The boarding of an aircraft marks not a conclusion, but a transition to the next stage of negotiation. The tour continues.